Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns. Hello, this is Kim Howerton. Welcome back to Keto Life Support. This is show 38. Today, I am talking with the delightful Neisha Salisbury. And what are we talking about? Well, today's title is Playing Well with Others. Why did we title it that? Well, because often when we go keto, we are living or interacting or experiencing life with people that don't do food exactly the way we do food. So because of that, I felt like it was an important topic to talk about, how you make it work. How do you make this work when, your dad is dirty keto, you're clean keto, they're lazy keto, like all these kinds of different things that people talk about. And how do we keep our eyes on the prize? And to use yet another cliche in a row, people, is, how do you keep perfection from getting in the way of good, right? Because so often we think, I got to do it exactly this way, and something gets slightly derailed, but it's still like 95% there. And we're like, well, it's all ruined. No. We're trying to be practical here and really talk about how do we make this work in real time, real life circumstances. So this is very much a talk between Neisha and I about her family experience with her parents, with Dr. Barry, with Beckett, and, me and my boyfriend, Eric, how we make this work in our households that aren't all eating the same. All right, welcome to Keto Life Support. I have a very exciting co-host for you today. I am here with the fabulous Neisha.
Hello, people. It's good to be back on this awesome podcast. We've kind of just been away for a minute.
I know. Well, it's sort of like you had a baby. Things are a little busy. You've got the upcoming summit, all sorts of stuff going on. Yeah. So one thing that you posted about recently was, you've got a really interesting household going on, especially when your parents are with you, that you've basically got a different version of keto for every person.
Yeah, there's a lot of diversity in this house when it comes to the way each of us is eating the quote unquote proper human diet. So yeah, it's very interesting. All of my What I Eat a Day vlogs, I try to do while my parents are here, because then I give a more well-rounded view of how things can be done and be done successfully, that not everybody's going to do ketovore like I do it, or go completely carnivore like Dr. Barry, and then that's okay.
Right. Yeah. I always look at it that we are all unique individuals, and it can be really challenging to not turn keto, or, I like the idea of the proper human diet, into a bit of a religious thing where
Right.
It's like, this is how you do it right, and that is how you do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
that has become a real big thing these days. And I don't know if it's because just the world is just really stressed out, and so people are just going at each other even more than they normally did, because there's always been a bit of dogma in pretty much every way of eating, but it seems very aggressive here lately. Some influencers going at each other and just acting like kids. And we're not into that. We think exactly what you said, bio-individuality, and what works for me may not work for you. And that doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. It means that we are taking the time and the initiative to experiment on ourselves and find out what works for us and our body and our disease process. Like, I have Hashimoto's, and my mom has Hashimoto's, and Ken was pre-diabetic type 2, and my dad is pre-diabetic as well. So each way we do things is going to affect our bodies individually. But, there are some things that I don't sway on. Like, I don't think you should eat the grains and the seed oils and sugar and like those things. I feel like those are common ground for most people who are wanting to do this for health optimization and not just weight loss. But that doesn't mean, that all of our macros are going to look the same.
Right. Totally. And even like, I sort of think there's like a center lane, and then there's sort of like side lanes. There's like a bit of a gray area. Like, you did a post the other day about snacky foods, like what I would probably call like keto versions of junk food.
Yes.
And I still would say, I think pretty much, I can't say this like a blanket statement, but thus far, every keto version of a junk food I've seen, I still think is probably less bad for you than the standard junk food version.
Yeah, for sure. Even the Oreos that I reviewed, they're still better than regular Oreos, 100%. But, I just feel like on the whole, staying with real food, one ingredient foods is going to be best for, like I said, health optimization. Like, I'm not talking about just weight loss. There are tons of people eating keto products and losing weight. That's fine. But, I'm more interested in my antibodies and how I feel, and not my size. And, people would be like, well, you're skinny, so it doesn't matter to you. But I did lose weight eating the way that I eat, and I didn't have to use all the products. But I do think my dad needs the products, or else he's going to go off on, to the Burger King and eat whatever he wants, and, ice cream, and like, he's got a sweet tooth. He loves rice and beans. Like, he does need alternatives. And so for those kind of people, I think that it's good that the keto products have become as, they're just everywhere now. There's a keto product for
Target.
Everything. Yeah. But they are expensive. That's what I find a little bit more offensive about them. They're really expensive.
Yeah. I, when people are like, oh, keto's so expensive, I'm like, how you doing it?
Yeah, right.
It is true. Like, good quality meat is pricey, but when I really look at my budget from before I was keto, a daily trip to Starbucks and getting a pastry and a this and a that and this other thing and this, I'm more than made up for that with my, being able to afford whatever meat I actually want to buy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't waste as much food. We wasted tons of vegetables in the refrigerator. Tons and tons of food would just go bad, and like, that's a waste of money, 100%. It didn't get eaten. It just went in the garbage. That right there is a loss.
Yeah. All right. So in your family, you've gone over like kind of how different people eat. In terms of, how is that for you? Like, I don't even know, like, do you feel like you're kind of the hub making sure that everybody feels taken care of for what they need to eat?
Yeah, I just try to. So my parents come and stay with us like 2 to 3 days a week to see Beckett and spend time with him. And so on the day before they get here, I do a grocery haul. And then I try to make sure I have plenty of eggs and bacon, because that's what my dad will eat 100% of the time. If I have eggs and bacon, he will cook it himself and he will eat it, and he's good. I try to have some snacks alternatives because they still want a snack. And so as long as I have something that's a good alternative, then I know they're not going to go down to the Dollar General and get M&Ms or whatever, fill in the blank. And so I get the Diet Dr. Peppers because they would rather drink that than water. And, well, I don't think Diet Dr. Pepper is wonderful for you. I think, like you said, with the keto products, like, it's probably a little better than the, however many grams of sugar are in a regular Dr. Pepper, especially for my dad, who is pre-diabetic. So that would obviously affect his blood sugar and his insulin and all that stuff. So I do try to prepare for that. And then obviously I buy Ken, like 18 steaks. And then I get chicken thighs for me and chicken breast for Morgan, because she prefers lean meat. That's what she likes, and she does fine on that. And so I get her chicken breast, and she grills her own chicken and she cooks for herself. So I just try to plan for the week for those who are going to be here so that they can eat and stay on track without stressing out about it. I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible for them to have what they need.
Yeah. That makes total sense. And I think a lot of people, a lot of listeners, which is why I wanted to touch on it, they're struggling because maybe they have a similar issue in that some of their members of their household might be keto, some of them might not be keto at all. Like, I live in a household with my boyfriend, Eric, and he's not keto. Like, he's supportive of keto, but we have all sorts of things in our cupboard that I don't touch. And I just wanted to say, like, it can be done. Any circumstance someone is in, if you focus on the right way for you rather than the right way or wrong way for someone else, you can do it. Do you ever feel challenged by the snacks in your house or anything?
Yeah, no, I was just about to say, now I will say that having those Quest chips in my house is a real problem for me because they are so good. They did a really good job. And I feel justified because it's only 5 grams total carbs for the whole bag. Like, that's not even that bad. It's not that big of a deal. In my head, I try to justify myself. And so for like a few weeks, that was a real problem. And then I was like, just stop. So I did have that. And a lot of people will have that, temptation. Well, it's there. And especially if someone in their house is just not keto at all. And so there's just crap all over the place. And you're like, well, I've done good for 3 days. I'm going to eat the potato chips, or whatever. And that makes it a challenge for sure. But you just have to remember why you're doing it. How is this going to affect my body? Is it worth it? Can I get away with it? And if I can, am I going to suffer for it? Is it going to make my stomach hurt? Is it going to make me bloat? Am I going to gain 3 pounds of inflammation in 2 days? Because that I do. If I go off plan, like I went to San Antonio with my grandparents who are Puerto Rican, okay, and they are obviously not keto, like beans and rice all day, every day. There's rice, every single meal. And it was Christmas, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to have some rice. And I literally gained 7 pounds in the week I was there. And I only ate probably 1/10 of the amount of rice that I used to eat while I was there. And it was all water and inflammation and everything, but I felt it in my bones and my joints. I hurt and I gained weight. It was awful.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. It was my birthday last week, and Eric, thank you. I saw that I'd wanted to try some keto treats that like a localish, about an hour and a half away, baker had been making that I'd been seeing. And I saw they were doing a delivery like up the street from our house. And so I was like, oh, Eric, go get me one. Like, one. But it was my birthday. And so I got home and there was a huge box of treats. He had bought the store like out. Like, he bought 2 of every flavor they had. And now I'm like, I don't know if I want this box of treats in my house.
It's a temptation. It's just sitting there, and then it has, the better ingredients, and it's keto friendly and all that.
And it doesn't raise my blood sugar. And
right.
So you can make lots of reasons why, like I said, and which is true. It's not a lie. It is much better than any alternative that I might have from a regular bakery. But at the same time, I am the captain of my ship. I have to decide if the benefit to my pleasure brain, is worth any negative repercussions. And so one thing I wanted to touch on, and you've touched on it several times, is, how do you decide where you draw your lines? Where do you set your boundaries? Because I think for a lot of people, and me included, when I first started keto, one of the really great things about it is it's kind of shifted a little bit since then, but it had really firm boundaries for a while, like
for a while. Yeah.
Black, white, yes, no, on the list, off the list. And that was kind of helpful for me because I'm an abstainer, not a moderator, right?
Right.
I'm not going to eat half a bag of something, right? If I'm eating it, I'm eating it. And once I open certain doors, I have trouble closing them. But if you tell me, like, don't open the door, it's a lot easier for me because I'm just like, okay, and I'm just not paying attention to that door.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that having rules is helpful for many people because then they're not questioning things. It's less complicated. It sounds like it wouldn't be with more rules, but the more rules, honestly, it makes it less complicated because you know the answer is no. The answer is no, I don't need that and I shouldn't have it and it's going to affect my body in a negative way. Like you said, moderator and abstainer. Like I'm a moderator. Ken cannot moderate.
No, I've been around Ken. He cannot.
Once he has taken a bite of something that is delicious, he keeps going and he keeps going. And it's like, it's a trigger. He gets really triggered, and that's why carnivore works best for him because it keeps him from getting triggered. Like that part of his brain somehow is just less active when he is satiated on meat. He doesn't have the sweet cravings. He's not in the pantry looking around, seeing what's in there. He just doesn't do that anymore. But if he ever stopped doing that, I guarantee you, he would be all up in the keto treats. And he wouldn't eat 2 keto cookies. He would eat 7 keto cookies, and they would have cream cheese with them, and he would have some heavy cream, and like it would just be a dessert keto friendly fiasco. But for him, that wouldn't be keto friendly because he would immediately see the effects of that and have negative effects, and like all of that would just wreck his whole entire next 3 days probably.
Right. And so that's where I think it's important. Right. Like, so you guys talk about the proper human diet, but I actually think what you can do as a human being is replace human with my name here. Right.
I was going to say, yeah.
The proper Neisha diet, and there's a proper Kim diet, and there's proper Ken diet.
Yes. 100%. Yes, exactly. That's what proper human diet means. It means that it's what is working for you and truly working for you, not like you're making excuses and it's working, but really, your A1C is still pretty high and your triglycerides are high and you're not seeing what you actually should be seeing if you were eating your proper human diet. That's where we were trying to lead you on this path to finding what is your proper human diet, what is going to bring that A1C down, what is going to get you off your blood pressure meds if you're someone who is affected by food for blood pressure, because some people it's genetic. That's why Ken says there's a spectrum. For some people it can be heavy meat, some people can eat more veg, some people can't eat any veg. We know several people in the carnivore community who literally get ill if they eat anything that's not meat or even grass-fed beef. And so there is a spectrum. Like what I eat and what Michaela Peterson eats doesn't, she can't eat veg. She can't do it. And that's because her body is super, super sensitive to those factors that are in plants that cause her pain and inflammation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then there's also this place where I think we can make decisions, right? Like, you might say, well, I know that my weight loss is better when I only eat meat and green veg, but my health doesn't get wonky when once a week I let myself have a keto treat or some heavy cream or some cheese, insert whatever food you think you shouldn't be eating. But if I include that, like my weight loss isn't as good, but my A1C is still good, my blood work is still good, all these things. I think we can all decide for ourselves what is appropriate or not. But, I don't think it's inappropriate to say, this is worth the trade-off for me, right? But I think we should be honest about the trade-off we're making.
Yeah, and I think it's about sustainability too, because if you keep telling yourself no to some things and you're the type of person who, that's exactly how I am. I can't tell myself I can only eat meat, no veg for you. It's a Neisha thing. If I allow myself to be unlabeled, then I naturally eat meat and very rarely any veg. But the minute I tell myself, nope, you're not allowed to have any veg anymore, all of a sudden I really want some vegetables.
You are now a vegetarian all of a sudden. I don't know what happened.
All of a sudden there is no meat in my diet. Right. So you have to, like you said, be honest with yourself. If you set yourself up to be held to this standard, is it going to work for you or is it going to work against you? And you really have to just know yourself, because if you are the type of person who, if you tell yourself no, that totally wrecks things, and before you know it, you're at the Dairy Queen eating a cookie dough blizzard, then you shouldn't do that to yourself. You can't do that and be successful. So if giving yourself permission to, like you said, once a week have some heavy cream or whatever keeps you in check and keeps you accountable and keeps you, like you said, your A1C is fine, all this stuff is going fine, then I think that if that works for you, then definitely that is the way you should do it. And a lot of people I talk to that have done it that way over time end up just being able to do it without those treats anymore.
Right. Yeah. Letting yourself sort of drift in a state of like self-approval, right? You're like, no, I let myself have the things that I can keep in control of. Because one of the things that I think is really important is there's a concept of trigger foods, right? It's that once I have some of this, I will keep going until I'm sick or it's gone. Or like I've recently had several clients talk to me about keto ice cream. You know, they'll get a little pint container
right
in the freezer. And I've learned, which is weird because ice cream is not one of my, I like ice cream, but it's not one of my trigger foods. They will just eat directly from the pint of ice cream and they'll just keep going until it's gone. And I'm like, why don't you measure it out and put it in a bowl and then put the pint away? And it's like a foreign concept to do that, right? It just seems impossible. And if that's the case, if you're like, I can't have one portion, then if I do, all I'm thinking about is what's left over until it's gone. That is a trigger food.
Exactly. So it all really comes back to being honest with yourself and knowing what triggers you and taking that into account as you go day by day into this proper human diet keto journey. And if you are an abstainer, then you should abstain.
Right.
I think that most people aren't ever going to do that like from the get-go. It's a process, figuring that out and deciding that, and it's just, I don't know, it's like this moment where you decide that doesn't have power over you anymore and you're the one in control. It's not your triggers, it's not your cravings. Like you have a choice and you absolutely have a choice. Yes or no, can I do this? Am I going to eat the whole pint? We have to learn to be honest with ourselves and realize the things that we may not want to acknowledge that are true, but they are. We just have to acknowledge that and hit them head on. And once you do that, then you're in control. And that's kind of liberating when you figure that out.
Totally. Yeah. I think being like, I have to say that going keto can be, if you take advantage of it, right? It can be one of the biggest growth experiences we get in a way, because we live in a society where food is the only, that I can think of, totally appropriate addiction that people have, right?
Yep.
Like if we acted around drugs or even alcohol the way we act around food, everyone would be like horrified. But we indulge in food, and it makes sense. Like there's such a spectrum with food, but many of us, if we're not full-blown addicts, have at least addict-like behaviors around food in a way that if we can overcome or learn to work with, it actually can change all aspects of our life.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get really offended when Ken, kind of puts food addiction next to drug addiction, because that can possibly be anywhere close to the same thing. Like cocaine and sugar, that's not the same. But it's when at the end of the day, when you see, can it kill you? Yes. Is it harming your body? Yes. Can you give it up very easily? No. So they are similar. They're similar in most ways that define addiction. Right. So they really do need to be put in the same category. And it's just this stigma we have attached to, we deserve it, it's a reward, like all these things that we've been taught all of our life. It's our birthday, it's whatever, it's fill in the blank, gives us an excuse. Like no one would do that if you inserted birthday cake with a line of cocaine.
Right.
It's your birthday, go crazy.
Have some Coke, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, some people maybe.
Well, maybe. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I guess there are some.
Yeah, but Yeah, and I get why people are offended, but I think one of the things that I will say is anytime you're using a substance to moderate your feelings, it's an addiction.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean you're a bad person, because a lot of people are like, but everyone does it. I'm like, yeah, but maybe it's not a good idea.
It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you this, I don't know, there's all this guilt and all that stuff, and it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary to have any of that. You just say, oh yeah, okay, I was doing this. Now I know I shouldn't do this. Now I'm not doing this. That's it. You don't have to go through this whole just people really beat themselves up, especially if they've had kids that they've fed this all their life and they have all this mom guilt, and it's like, you didn't know. It's not your fault. Now you know. Now you can do better, and now you can change. And like the stress and the guilt, that doesn't help anything. Just let it go and take the steps that you need to take to do better, and then things will get better. It's just, it's so frustrating to see people get so upset that they've wrecked their health all this time. Yeah, but now you know, and you have time. You have time, and it's not a race, and you're not in competition with other people. The only competition you have is who you were yesterday. So if you're doing better than you did yesterday, then you're winning.
Right. And so often I see people get to a place where they made strides, they did well, and then they have a bad day or a bad week, and they go back to some old coping mechanisms around food. And, all that means is you didn't yet get to a place where you have other go-to coping mechanisms that you need to develop. It's like you went back to the old thing, but all is not lost. You can make a new choice right now, even, no matter what has happened. And I think people, I usually say that I look at our psyche as like a minivan, right? And there's like a bunch of different people in the minivan. There's like a 2-year-old and there's a grandma, and like there's a whole family in there. And a lot of times we let the wrong person drive our psyche minibus, right? The adult conscious person needs to drive. Occasionally, though, they aren't paying attention. The 2-year-old jumps into the driver's seat and starts driving and, takes you to the candy store. And you're like, whoa, let's get a handle on this situation. Like, you don't have to be like, well, I'm burning the minivan, to be like, all right, let me just get the right person back in the driver's seat.
Exactly. That's such a good analogy.
On the road. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Weird analogy, but it helps sometimes
perfect.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not driving. Why am I not driving? Yeah.
It is, like you said, though, like if you allow this way of eating to do all the things it can do, it can be such a stepping stone for self-development, just like these type of things.
Right. And you're a mom now, right? And so one of the things I see, you're like, what? Crazy. But I see this with moms all the time. Food has been their only appropriate self-care for decades. I mean, I should say it's not an appropriate, it's not really self-care, but in their mind, it's the only thing they allowed themselves, which is like, they weren't allowed to take a day off. They weren't allowed to go out by themselves. They couldn't do anything except have a cookie. Like that was the only thing they could do, quote unquote, for themselves.
Right. There are days when I'm like, I deserve a pint of cookie dough ice cream. I deserve every bite of it. And I mean, there are days where it's just like, there's nothing else. I just need something sweet. It's really weird. I don't know. Mom brain is just, you just rationalize things a little differently. Like, I've done so much today. I kept a tiny human alive, and that's boom. I deserve what I want. But I think that 5 years ago, before I was eating the way that I am, I think that definitely would be a coping mechanism to like the days that are hard when he's running around like a little baby terrorist into everything, that, running down to the Dairy Queen and getting a blizzard would feel like a little vacation and a little escape and make, I think that I definitely would use that as a coping mechanism 100%, because there are just days when nothing you can control. You can't control anything but what you put in your mouth. Like you said, there's just nothing in your control.
Right. And I think that a lot of us are really bad at boundaries for ourselves and for other people, like all of it. And I think keto can be a way, and I'm just using keto as the word because it's short, but you could insert phrase here.
Whatever.
Mastering the way of eating that works for you is just very long. Can be sort of like an entry level course into boundaries. Like, no, I have a boundary here. I eat this, I don't eat that. Well, now you're learning how to make lines like, oh, I'm not going to just eat this thing at my mother-in-law's house that makes me sick, even because I have this boundary now. And you can start to actually learn how to do things that improve your life, not just go with the flow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I totally get it. I deserve it. This will make me feel better. I don't have time to take a shower, but I can put this popsicle in my mouth, whatever.
Mm-hmm. But it never does actually make us feel better. I think that remembering that and keeping that at the forefront of our minds is a really good way to keep ourselves in check, because not one time did a food make me feel better. Most of the time, I felt worse after I ate the food. It tasted good going down that pleasure center and that sugar and the rush. That felt great. But afterwards, not one time was I like, yep, better now.
Right. I think, honestly, you can use as a guide if something's a good idea or not. How will you feel afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Like, lots of things feel good while we're doing them.
Yes.
It's not long enough. Right. It has to make you feel good after you've finished doing it.
Exactly. That definitely keeps me in check on the days where I'm like, cookie dough is my thing. Like, that's my weakness. That is the thing. If it was sitting in front of me, I would have a very hard time not eating it.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything else, not really that big of a deal. But if I think about it and I'm like, yeah, but then what? Then what's going to happen? It's like, yeah, no, I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. I'm going to go eat a steak. Okay.
Because if Beckett is running around and being a little terror, you're probably going to hate that even more when you have a stomach ache and a food coma.
Exactly. That's not going to help my situation at all.
Right. That's when you're like, Ken, take him. I'm going outside for a while.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, and I think that's a good gauge. So one of the things I like to look at when I'm developing what works for me and what doesn't work for me is you kind of go through and ask yourself some questions. Like, you have to know your goals. I think with any way to know, people are like, is cheese keto or is cheese carnivore? And you're like, well, technically from a definition standpoint, yes.
Yes.
But that doesn't tell me anything about whether you should eat cheese or not.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's why I just stress so much people experimenting on themselves, because cheese does not work for me anymore, which is the saddest thing ever. No, I've had to cut back, and I may have to eliminate it completely at some point. But for a long time, it wasn't even a big deal. I didn't care. I used heavy cream. I used cheese, blah, blah, blah. And I was completely fine. And I think there are a lot of people that still are completely fine. But if you just label something keto and think that you can just eat as much as you want of it, and then you find yourself stalled or maybe even gaining weight, and you're like, but I'm not doing it wrong. This is keto. I'm doing keto. Cheese is keto. Then it starts to be very frustrating when you're not open to looking at keto foods as maybe not being the proper Neisha diet.
Right. And that's, what we talked about earlier is the freedom of black and white. Unfortunately, it's a tool and not every tool is right for every instance. And your point is perfect, that the way your body responds to food this week might not be the way it responded to foods last week.
Exactly. I think that's especially common with women just because we go through so many changes in our lifetime. Like our hormones go through many changes, and men do too, but for the most part, women fluctuate much more. We go through, hormones with pregnancy, postpartum hormones, menopause hormones. There's
different
so many
days
things.
of every month as the levels
exactly.
of estrogen and all that is going up and down. And
Yep. We literally cycle like the moon, and we have to take that into account.
Right. And then sometimes you're like, why am I bloated? And you're like, oh, it's this time of my cycle. And then other times it's because you had cheese. Like, you're like,
exactly.
What? I don't know what's happening. So yeah. And there's not an option to get off the roller coaster, I'm sorry to say. So sometimes you have to just learn to enjoy it.
Yep. Roll with the punches.
Exactly. So what do you look at when you're trying to decide if something is good for you? Or is there like a signal you get from your body, right? So like we eat a certain way, like we like certain foods, we're going to eat, like for the most part, we're not waking up every morning with a blank slate thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to eat. We kind of have a rotation of foods we like. Is there a signal you feel in your body when you're like, maybe I should think about this? Like the cheese thing, say.
Well, if I have more pain, like some days I just have more pain. And that's a lot, I think, to do with the fact that I have breast implants. So my back pain sometimes is a whole lot worse. And so on those days, I'm like, I probably should stay away from the cheese because that tends to make me a little bit more inflamed. I look at that, and then I've been paying attention to more after the fact. Veggies sound really good, or someone's made something that it tastes delicious. Like I had the riced cauliflower, and it was awesome. It tasted wonderful going down. But then afterwards, I was really bloated, and then I had some Brussels sprouts like the week before that, and I had a lot of like epigastric pain and bloating, and I was just triggered by veggies, which was really annoying. But for me at this point, I have been off of veggies more and more and more. So I think when I reintroduce them, my body's like, whoa, what's up? Because we haven't seen you in a long time. And I think if I went veg heavy again, I'd build up a tolerance or whatever. And it would be, but do I want to do that? Or am I going to acknowledge the signals my body's telling me that's like, maybe these don't work for you that great. Actually, you just thought that they did,
Yeah, I mean, I recently went veg heavy for the first time in years, right? I was like, let's see what happens. Push the envelope a little bit. And I found there are certain veggies that I can go hog wild on. I can eat, as many as I want. And then other veggies that I actually love, I'm like, that's not good. Like, it doesn't feel good to eat that. And so I think we all, kind of have to go through some experimentation when we have those moments. But.
For sure.
Yeah. One thing that came up recently is like nutritional testing. I had that done years ago, and then I delved deeper into the science of it and came out realizing it can be a slippery, sticky slope sometimes. And I'd love to learn more about it, but I've yet to, because one of the things I heard is when people do nutritional, because they're like, I'll do nutritional testing and then I'll find out what I should and shouldn't eat. But one of the problems is if you eat foods a lot, they sometimes show up as a false, I don't know if the word is
sensitive?
Positive or negative. Yeah, false sensitive.
Yeah.
Like if you eat a lot of cucumbers, it'll show that you should never eat cucumbers, but it's just because of how much you eat them.
Yeah.
So there's that element that really confuses me about it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel. I did what is it, Dunwoody?
Yeah, I hear that one's supposed to be like kind of the gold standard.
It's pretty pricey, but she's like, are you going to do this and actually follow it, the nurse practitioner, or are you just doing it to do it? And I was like, I don't know yet. She's like, I really wish she would follow. She was very frustrated that I may not give a crap. I may not give a crap what it said, and I was going to do whatever I wanted. That very much frustrated her. But I was like, look, I'm not sold on that this stuff is accurate. I haven't done a lot of research. I know it, shows the IgG and the IgE and like something else. But like you said, what if I'm eating a lot of beef? and that raises my sensitivity, does that really mean I shouldn't eat it? Because my body feels awesome. So clearly things are okay. So I don't know. We should delve into that.
We should do a show on that. Maybe we'll do some research when you get your test results back. I'll pull my old test results up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm eager to see what it says I'm sensitive to. I think I just like data. I think it's fascinating. Yeah. I don't put a lot of stock in those type of tests because, like you said, it's so kind of wishy-washy. I don't know. I'm not sold on it yet.
Yeah, because I also think, honestly, one of the best ways to figure out what you might be sensitive to is to just do a carnivore elimination diet.
Yeah.
And go experiential. Yeah.
I trust my body more than I trust a test that's not 100%. Like, I don't know. There's nobody that I can find that's like, this may be the gold standard, but is it 100% accurate if on people who eat carnivore?
Yeah.
Because you had somebody comment on your page the other day, and I think they were eating heavy beef, and then it showed they were sensitive to beef, and it's like, but is that a coincidence, or is she really sensitive to beef?
Right. And if I have somebody who's like, unless I eat 99% of my diet as beef, I don't feel great, and it comes back saying that they're sensitive to beef, like, is that a service to have them stop eating the food that actually makes them feel good for the first time in their life?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
exactly.
I can't. So yeah. Anyway, so we should do a show on that when you get your results back.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other tips we want to give people to navigate figuring out where to put their bumpers? Those bowling lanes. Where are your bumpers? Where are your boundaries? How do you decide where to put them?
I think your boundaries should directly reflect your goals. So if you're just doing this to lose weight, then, I guess your bumpers and your boundaries probably aren't going to be as strict as someone who may have type 2 diabetes and be on, several hundred units of insulin a day, because their goal is going to be to get off that insulin. And so those boundaries need to be set to have as few carbs as possible, to get quality real food, not packaged food, things that aren't going to increase blood sugar, not going to increase insulin, those type of things. Those are the boundaries someone who has a medical issue is going to need to set. I think they should directly reflect that. So Hashimoto's, same thing. What's going to trigger your inflammation and your autoimmune and your antibodies? What's going to bring those down? That needs to be where your boundaries are set. Otherwise, you're just kind of leaving the door open to eat whatever you want. If you're allowing yourself to eat sugar and you're a type 2 diabetic, then are you doing yourself any favors? Probably not. That's where I think people should start and then go from there. But it's really all about, what is your goal? Is your goal to be healthy as possible? Then your boundaries are going to eventually become stricter and stricter, for sure. But if you're just here to lose weight and you don't care what's in the ingredients list, then, go ham.
Right. Food is not morality. Food is data for your body to respond to. Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think also one thing that has come up recently I've noticed is people are like, I cheated on my carnivore with a salad. And I'm like, look, if it's a real whole food and you felt good eating it, I don't know that you should think of that as wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'd say ketovore, because it literally, like, you can't tell me I'm not doing it right, because there is no right way to do it.
Right. I would just remind everyone out there in the world that there is a proper Neisha diet, there is a proper Kim diet, there's proper Ken Berry diet, there's a proper. And so when somebody posts about what they're eating, maybe consider that they might know themselves better than you know them. And you don't necessarily have to make a negative comment, though you can always ask a question. If you're curious, be curious. Don't be judgmental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's a lot about where we are in the world right now and all the chaos, but just keep it kind, because literally no one wants to hear the negative stuff. Nobody wants to hear it. It doesn't help anybody. You're just going to get blocked, or you're going to get into a Facebook argument and you're going to look like
An idiot.
12-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I totally agree with you. Like, knowing your goals is super important. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't even know if I know my goals, maybe spend some time thinking specifically about your goals. And by the way, your goals don't mean wearing a certain size or being a certain weight. I mean, that can be included, but it should be a larger picture of how your life looks and how you feel and how you function. And knowing where you want to be so that you can set, you got to set the GPS somewhere, right? You got to set your direction so that you know where you're going to get.
And realistic. You need to be very realistic when it comes to if you're writing down a weight loss goal, because like people get really frustrated when they didn't lose 20 pounds in the first week. And it's like, yep, that doesn't happen to a lot of people, and that's okay. It's okay. That shouldn't be number one on your goal list, because it's going to be the most weird for every single person. Like, nobody's losing weight at the same amount of time. Nobody's losing it straight down. Most people go up, down, stall for, that's at the bottom of the list. It should be like, also, I'd like to lose weight, at my own pace.
Right. I mean, you see a lot of people, me or Cindy, who've had great success on keto, changed all sorts of health markers, turned around her type 2 diabetes, lost a bunch of weight, but wasn't maybe exactly where she wanted to be. And then took some time, reevaluated, stayed on the course, and looked at other things. And now she's losing weight again. Like, there will be, if you make the weight the number one issue, you will just be disappointed all the time, because it's an area we're never happy with.
You're just going to be frustrated time and time and time again. Yep.
Yeah. And then the last point I think I want to make is around trigger foods, just circling back. So we all have unique trigger foods is what I want to say. And a trigger food I define as a food, once you have it, you can't stop eating that food, or you just can't stop eating, period. Right. You have this thing, and from there forward, you're back on the constant eating train for some period of time. It could just be an hour, but it might be a day, a week, a month, or whatever. It's like the food that unlocks the door. And we all have a different trigger food issue. For some of us, it's anything with sugar, right? But for me personally, it's like 2 or 3 brands of cookies, right? Like, Eric could have any number of cookies in the house and I would not want them. This was not true when I ate garbage crap. I would eat anything. Even if I didn't like it and it had sugar in it, I would still eat it. But now I find when I go down the aisle in the grocery store, my eye is still drawn to 1 or 2, just a few brands where I'm like, oh, I remember those.
Yeah.
And if I had those in my house, I would be tortured by them.
Yes.
And so we don't have those in my house. So for everyone out there, like, know where you have to draw the line. And if it's not in your presence, you can't eat it.
Right. You have to know what food is Pandora's box for you, because that's literally the definition of a trigger food. When you unlock that box, you can't put it back in there. If you can't put it back in the box, don't open the box.
Right. I think that's a good point to wrap this one up. Neisha Berry, is there anything else you want to talk about before we go?
I think that we've done pretty good. I'm pretty happy
with it. It's nice
it.
to have you back.
Thank you.
All right. Say hi to the fam, ma'am.
I will.
And we will get this up and running and get people on the right track.
Awesome. Yay.
Okay, lady. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're